have had the opportunities to go to other schools at that point. They got together at Nazareth and they played a style of lacrosse that was fast, exciting, and a lot of touches on the ball, a lot of movement. And I think, in my opinion, and you can chime in here, that's really what set Nazareth apart from everybody else and got them in a competitive situation to be ready to play the likes of Hobart and Salisbury's and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think those kids certainly liked that style, that fast-paced style, where you got up and down the field and scored a lot of goals and did a lot of things in transition. And you mentioned Billy Coons. I think he was probably the first really key recruit in terms of forming the foundation of the program. As you mentioned, he was a great high school player at Rush Henrietta, and he also brought his brother Tom along with him, and he was a good player as a midfielder. And I think those two guys kind of started the foundation, if you will, and really got the program headed in the right direction. And they were successful right from the get-go. I know Nelson wanted them to be good right away, and that's why he went out and he wasn't around campus very much that first fall of 1985. He was out there recruiting kids and trying to get as many good players as he could.
Now we're gonna call Billy Coons here shortly to get his take on it. When Billy came in, Billy was an attacker from Russian Rada and ended up, at the end of his 4 years being the all-time leading scorer in Nazareth history, and held that position, that record, for a very long time, and which is really tough to do, seeing the way the game has evolved and the number of players that were able to play early when they were freshmen and sophomores. Billy was able to, he was the quarterback. He was the main part of the team and really launched Nazareth into their stardom. And I think, what was the first key win that really showed that Nazareth can play at that level in either at 1986 or 97? But I know there was a couple, if not one or two, key wins that Nazareth had that really gave the team the confidence, saying, hey, we can play at this level, and told the rest of the nation, hey, you better look out because Nazareth is coming.
I think the first year they finished with a record of 8-3, and they played teams around the state like Potsdam and Lemoyne and Hartwick. I think they beat Hartwick and Lemoyne that first year, and I think that helped initially. And then the second year they improved the schedule a little bit with teams like Geneseo, who was pretty good at the time, and Washington College, who was nationally ranked at the time. They came to Nazareth and played.
Yeah, I was at that
second year
in high school. I remember going to that game, watching that game.
Nazareth got beat fairly handily, but they held their own. I think it was a pretty close game at halftime, and Washington ended up winning like 16-7 or something like that. And that was a huge game the second year, and then that moved into the third year, and they played down at Salisbury. I think that was the first huge win, was that third year, 1988. They beat Salisbury at Salisbury, and that catapulted Nazareth into the national rankings. I think they were ranked fourth after that win. So those were the kind of the key games at that time.
Gotcha. Fitz, do we have Billy Coons on the phone yet? Okay, we're getting there. Yeah. So we were, Carl, as you said, you were at those games. I was at those games.
Yeah, I remember going to that game. Washington College played Nazareth at Naz. It was pretty cool to see a team like Washington, who had been was a national powerhouse at the time, played in the national championship, I think 4 or 5 times, until that year. What was it, 87? And, they lost to Hobart a bunch of times, but they were an amazing team. And D3 back then, and they came up to Naz, and Naz did lose to them, but still to play a team that caliber and only lose by 5 or 6 goals in your second or third season of even having a program is there's a lot to give credit for that, I think. I mean, and then a lot of it had to do with the kids he recruited, and a lot of it had to do with Nelson's mindset. He drove into you that you weren't going to lose no matter what you did, and that's how we practiced, and that's how we played. So
yeah, I mean. That group, and there were so many of them that when you and I got there in 1989, there's so many of those kids that were still there that you were very fortunate to start as a as a freshman with that group on the defensive midfield. You know, myself and and Dan Coughlin and Greg Gephardt, and obviously Greg turned out to be a several-time All-American. We came out of high school being these really good players, and then when we got there, we didn't know who these guys were, but they were really, really good, and thus we had to sit and wait our turn. We do have Billy Coons on the line. Bill, how are you?
I'm doing well, Ron. How are you?
Great, thanks. Here, Billy, we're here with the rise of Nazareth Lacrosse. With we got Jumpin' Joe Seil on the line here. He's zoomed in, and Carl's in the next booth over.
Iceman, what's up, buddy?
How you doing, dog?
I'm good. How are you, pal?
Billy, we're sitting here discussing your recruitment a little bit. When you got there, you were the quarterback. You ended up being Nazareth's all-time leading scorer. I assume, because I've known you for a long time, that you had other offers and you had other opportunities to go to maybe more established lacrosse schools at that time, and you chose Nazareth. And tell me a little bit about that decision.
Well, it was interesting. Recruiting was a lot different back then. We would get schools come to our schools to recruit us. We get colleges to come to our schools to recruit us. Nowadays, more recruitment through clubs. I was being recruited by some D1 schools, including Michigan State, Delaware, Army, Navy, Air Force. And my brother, Tom, who's a year older than me, had gone to Army prep school. And he backed out of that. He said it wasn't for him. So he wound up going to San Diego State and was playing club lacrosse while I was a senior in high school. So our season was going along. I had not made a decision. I'm kind of waiting to make a decision. I wanted to talk to my brother. He wanted to come back east and play lacrosse. So after one of my high school games, my coach, Jim Cox, introduced me to Scott Nelson. And I didn't know who Scott Nelson was. So he introduced himself and said, "Hey, I'm starting a program at Nazareth College. Wondering if you might be interested." And I'm like, honestly, I've never heard of Nazareth College. So we both kind of got a giggle, and I did take an opportunity to go out there and look at it, and it was a nice little school up the campus. And then I got to thinking, at that time, there was no pro lacrosse leagues to play in afterwards, and I just wanted to play for 4 years. I didn't want to do kind of what you were just talking about, Ron. I didn't want to sit on the bench and wait my turn. So the more I thought about it, I could go right in there and figured, I would, if I didn't start, I would at least see a lot of playing time right off the get-go. If I went to one of those D1 schools or a more prominent D3 school, I figured I'd sit in the bench for a little while. So I called my brother up and said, "Hey, Tom, this guy, Scott Nelson, I think you probably know his brothers. His brothers at the time were playing at Syracuse and were good lacrosse players. He's starting a program at Nazareth College, and he wants us both to go." And that was another thing that I asked Scott about. I said, "Listen, I have a brother. He wants to come." He goes, "Hey, perfect. That's great." So I'm talking to Tom, and Tom's like, "You know what? I've got to come back east. Got to play lacrosse out there. It's not as serious out here yet." So I said, "Well, what do you think? I mean, we could go there and we could play immediately, or we could go somewhere else and potentially, just bide our time until we get to start." And he's like, "You know what? Let's do it. I trust your opinion. If you want to do it, let's do it." So that's all I needed to hear. And we called up Scott and said, "Hey, here we come.
We're coming." Now, with that decision, for you and your brother Tommy, did you ever think that in a million years that you would have had the impact that you had in college lacrosse? For one, Nazareth, is a really history storied program that when people know about Nazareth Lacrosse, that's not happening if it wasn't for the Coons brothers coming to Nazareth and doing what you've did. Did you think at that time that would ever be a possibility? I mean, yes, you didn't win the national title, but you set the stage for 3 national titles after that, and a lot of winning season and just a really successful program. And you and Tommy and some others were the start of it, but you and Tommy were really the main ones that basically started those runs and building that program. Did you ever think at that time that you'd make your mark like that at Nazareth College?
I knew my capabilities, but I really didn't know these other kids that were coming to play that first year. But I did know the Nelson family, and he seemed like a go-getter. That's Scott, by the way. And I kind of trusted him that he was going to try and make something big here. Did I think I would impact lacrosse or recruiting, really? No, I really didn't.
Yeah, well, you did.
Well, I know the three of us here are all from Henrietta, so we have some close ties, and I'm glad that you guys chose to follow me over to Nazareth, and I'm sure a lot of other people are too.
Yeah, it definitely made a huge difference for when I was recruited that you were there. I mean, I saw you play in high school, and we did go to school together for 1 year in high school. I didn't play with you because I was on the JV team, but I remember you being a legend there, and you going to Naz was just like, I don't know, it kind of helped me, for me at least, kind of cement my decision to come there. And Scott was a very charismatic recruiter. He knew the right things to tell you, and he just, he got you pumped up, and he was like, listen, we're going to win the national championship. Come on over. And I was like, all right, let's do it. So
Scott used to bring Tommy and Billy on his recruitment trips over to Russia and
all the time, yeah.
So Joe,
Bill, I got a question for you.
Yeah, Joe.
Can you hear me? By the time you were a senior, you guys were pretty competitive. You were in the national rankings in the NCAA tournament, and I think your last game of your senior year, you're down at Hobart, 1989, and you're playing in the semifinals. How realistic was it in your mind that you could go down there and beat a team like Hobart?
I was 100% convicted that we would go down there and beat them. Long grass and all, thunderstorms and all.
It didn't work out that year, but you certainly laid a foundation.
You know what? I tossed my hat at graduation that morning. We drove down to Hobart, and all I'm thinking is we're going to beat this team. We're going to find a way. It's not going to be easy. They're a great team. Had been a great team. I don't know how many they had won in a row, national championships to that point. But yeah, I really felt that we were going to beat them in 1989. And we gave them a run, but we didn't quite finish the job.
Yeah, I think we all had the confidence that we were going to go down there and win that day. And I think, had Jerry Gutchis not hurt his leg that season, and he was still in a cast on his foot, he blew out his ankle earlier in the year. I think if he had been healthy all season, I think that would have made a bigger difference. It's hard to say one player would really change the outcome, but man, he was good.
Well, he's a game changer. He's an All-American.
Yeah, there's no doubt. So I think you tweak things here and there a little bit, and I think we only lost that game by 3 goals, maybe, or 4 goals. In that monsoon and the 6-inch grass and the refs and everything else, and the funny, it was a great game.
The funny thing is, we're talking about a 3-goal game with a team that won at that point, I believe, 10 consecutive national championships, and Billy was a senior at that time, and Nazareth Lacrosse was only 4 years old.
Yep.
And so you could really start to see, Nazareth Lacrosse is coming, it's coming, and guys like Billy and his brother and so forth, built that foundation, and for the next role of kids to come through to try to, the winning the national championships was definitely the goal, but to reach that goal you had to go through Hobart, and everyone knew that, and it just seemed like that was on our minds every single day of every single practice that we needed to beat Hobart, and we saw how close we could come, in '89. And 90 is a different story, and we'll get into that in a second. But Billy, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. And believe me when I tell you, you definitely, you and your brother are the foundation of this, and I'm glad to have you a part of it.
My pleasure, guys. Thanks.
Right, thanks, Bill.
Bye-bye.
See
So,
ya.
Joe, we come out of 1989 with a loss, right? Losing a lot of great players, losing Bill Atkinson, and some really, really outstanding lacrosse players. And we had a big freshman class come in. Carl and I's class was a rather large class. I think it was up to 10 at that point. And going into the 1990 season, we were guns a blaring. We thought that we were ranked, right? Were we ranked at that time coming in? Just losing to Hobart the year before, we had to be ranked in 1990, right?
Sure, of course.
And the wheels came off. we had this great momentum going over and over and over for the first 3 years, and then the wheels come off Nazareth Lacrosse. Tell me what Scott Nelson was thinking at that point.
Well, that was a tough time. The 1990 season, we still had a pretty good record, but we lost some really tough games we lost a 1-goal game to Alfred, I think. We lost
that was a bad one.
A close game to RIT.
Yep.
Was like 12-10 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the first time we'd ever played RIT. And we felt really confident going in, I think, and we ended up losing by a couple goals. And then we lost to Hartwick, down at Hartwick in a snowstorm down there. I think it was a close 1-goal game. So those 3 losses were just crippling. And we finally got it together toward the end of the year where we were on a pretty good roll at the end of the year, but it was those losses early in the year that really hurt us. And we ended up not making the NCAA tournament that year and ended up in the ECA season. I think we pretty much dominated the ECAC tournament that year, but it was disappointing that we didn't make the NCAAs because of those. But those 3 losses were what really cost us.
You call it disappointing. Talk about embarrassing. I mean, we come off the 89 season, as I said, losing to Hobart at Hobart, being ranked up to 4th in the country, ended up, beating Salisbury that year in the quarterfinals. And then we come back and we lose to Alfred. We lose to Hartwick.
That was a bad
We
run.
lose to RIT. I mean, that was humiliating.
I mean, the beginning of that season started off pretty good. We went down to the Washington College tournament, and we beat Washington. Mm-hmm. And then, we beat Ohio Wesleyan.
Correct.
And then we lost to Washington the next day. And that was a close game. I think it was overtime maybe, or close to it, something like that. I don't know.
I remember Nelson telling me after, I think we played Ohio Wesleyan the first game of the year, right?
Yeah, we did. Down at Washington College. And all the alumni were down there.
And beat them, and Nelson said, I think we're in the tournament already. After beating them in that first game, because they were such a powerful team at the time. Ohio Wesleyan, they were in the top 3 or 4
was in the top.
Yeah, they were good. They had some really good lacrosse players there, and
they had lost to Hobart, I think, in the national championship.
I think you're right.
That year, in 1989, they lost to Hobart in the championship.
Right.
And I think they played them 2 years in a row, so they were a really good team. We went down there and beat them, and then we played OWU. That was the game we got in that big fight.
Yeah.
Remember that? The bench clearing brawl.
Bench
against
clear with
Washington.
And I remember Marty's brother played for Washington College at the time.
That's right,
so,
man. Yeah.
But it was funny. And like I said, I think the funny part to it is we're coming off this great season, then we get completely humiliated. But there was a shining star in the mix that with Marty Kelly, right? He came in late, took over Matt DeDuro's starting spot in 89. Was a 2-time All-American coming out of high school from Westchester, down in Westchester where Scott Nelson was from. So I think that maybe had a lot to do with it. But Marty comes in and is, the best attacker in the country at this point. So, but we still had a really crappy season. So I think we got Marty on the phone. Marty, are you on the phone?
I'm here. Yep. Hey, guys.
What's up, Marty?
Hey, Marty.
Marty, we're here with.
Hear me okay?
Yeah, we're here with Joe, Seil, and Carl's in the other room in the studio as well. So Marty, we were just talking about this podcast is the rise of Nazareth Lacrosse, and you were certainly a big part of that. When you got there in '89, you ended up taking a starting spot from a senior, Matt DeDuro, who was a very good lacrosse player. But I think that everyone's seen the Marty Kelly train coming, and I think you scored some big goals and some big games at that position. Then we get into the 1990 season, and we got Gebby in goal, and we got you leading the attack, and Carl and Rich Kilgore, and a lot of great players ready to go. And we ended up losing to Alfred, losing to RIT, losing to Hartwick that year, and not making the NCAA playoffs. What was your mindset? Coming in, having a great freshman year, and then coming in a really embarrassing. I call it. Joe called it disappointing. I call it embarrassing. 1990 year.
Joe.
It was tough. I mean, I think we all thought we could have done a little bit better. That senior class that graduated, after our freshman year was just loaded, and there was obviously a lot of great leadership there too. So, I think it's a lot like college football. Back then it seemed like a lot like college football now. Is if you kind of lose games early because they were only taking 8 teams in the tournament, it was hard to really recover from it. And we had those close losses to Alfred and RIT, and I think Hartwick was kind of the killer, but. I do think by the end of the year, I know we kind of crushed both teams, and I think we went to the ECAC tournament, I believe. And I mean, it was tough because I think we were at that time easily one of the top 4 teams in the country. We just lost too early, So it was disappointing. I guess the ECACs wasn't exactly what we were looking to do, obviously. But we did win our last game of the year. So I think that was certainly encouraging. I think the way we played that weekend of the ECACs kind of showed all of us, at least me, that we were one of the top 4 teams in the country without a doubt. But we couldn't do much. It was too late.
So with you and Carl at the end of that season, when you guys became captains in 91, right? Did you guys look at it as, we have to start over, or that was just a bump in the road and we're going to go forward? Because the landscape of the team did change each year, for better or for worse. We don't really know. We had some great players in 1990 that I thought were fantastic. We had Rich Kilgore, guys like that who we would have loved to have in 91. But you and Carl became the captains of that team in 91 as juniors. Like I said, did you think we had to start over? I mean, Nazareth had a run, then we took a dip. Are we starting over, or are we, hitting the ground running in 91?
Yeah, no, I didn't think we needed to change all that much. I can't remember, when did Dave Pratt come back? I mean, obviously he was a huge addition. I'm not sure Dave played our freshman year, did he? So
he did
I don't know. I just felt it was a matter of, guys just kind of getting more experience. I mean, I think. Obviously you, Ronnie, you became a first-team All-American, but you didn't play a whole lot your freshman year. It was just a matter of, giving guys a certain opportunity to play, and, Dan Coughlin and, a lot of those guys, and really just kind of putting the pieces in the certain spots, Tim Cox came in, obviously, our junior year, and, that was huge. He was just obviously a lot of fun to play with at the attack position because he was such a great feeder, and he had such great game sense. So I think, I just felt it was a matter of getting everybody more experience, really, and just giving guys time to play. And I think, and plus, I think everybody had a chip on their shoulder from the previous year. So, I mean, I don't know what you thought, Carl, and if you guys had already talked about this before I got on, but that was my thought process.
Yeah, I mean, it was embarrassing that, like Ronnie said. I mean, I think we were more pissed than anything else, and we just made up our minds to say, listen, we're not going to go through that again. And we just that's just how we practiced and how we played. I mean, we beat the crap out of each other in practice, and we, even if we weren't going to be the best team with our stick skills or whatever else we had to do, we were going to be the toughest team, and you weren't going to outwork us. So I think that's the lesson that we learned in that year, that we had those losses, that we just didn't work hard enough. We thought we were going to come in and beat those teams, and they were going to roll over, and they didn't. And that was a pretty valuable lesson for us because we only lost to one team after that.
Right. Joe, what was Scott's mindset? What was the mindset of the coaching staff? You were close with all of them. You were right there in the mix of it. Tell us what the vibe was at Nazareth College that we, coming off that bad year.
I think in 1990, I think right down to the end of the year, I think he thought that Nazareth was going to get into the NCAA tournament. But those losses in the middle of the year really hurt us. And so he tried to make the best of it, making it to the ECAC. I think we ended up winning the last 7 games of that season to win the ECAC. So we had some pretty good momentum going into the 1991 season. And I think we might have won our first 7 or 8 games in 1991 before we played Hobart in the regular season, and they beat us then. And then we ended up playing them again in the playoffs. So yeah, I think he was disappointed certainly that they didn't make the NCAAs, but I think he thought that we were going to still make it even despite those early season losses. But he tried to make the best of it by winning the ECACs.
Right. In the 91 season, going into 91, like I said, Carl and Marty, they're the captains. I think that we had a lot of personnel changes going from 90 to 91. For one, we had the addition of Cam Bomberry come in, which was huge. The other thing that I thought was notable to talk about was Danny Coughlin. Danny didn't play much, if at all, his freshman year. Sophomore year, I thought that he had an outstanding fall and in spring, going into spring, but it didn't seem like Nelson ever gave Cougar the confidence and the go ahead, like, hey, listen, this is your position, Dan. It's yours to lose. It was always Dan's position to gain, and I mentioned him specifically because he was part of the when things weren't going so well. He always played very consistent. He didn't drop passes, he didn't score 100 goals, but he was very consistent. We had a lot of guys like that on that team that were just very consistent people. And I think once everyone understood their roles and bought into that, with Nelson's philosophy of this is the way things are going to go, I think that's when we all started to believe and things started to get better for all of us at Nazareth, and the rise started to happen again. And like I said, the reason why I talk about Danny individually is because he was one of the guys that were Mr. Consistent, that really, he didn't score the game winner in overtime, right? But he got the ground balls and so forth. And so our attack kind of got solidified with Marty and Cougar and Timmy Cox came in there, right? Timmy Cox, a transfer from Maryland. He got in there, and then he ended up losing his spot because he got in some trouble. But we had, so you got Marty Kelly on attack, you got Dan Coughlin on attack, you got Tim Cox on attack, you got Carl Jutzin, Brian Silcott, Chris March, Jake Lazor at that point on the 91 team, right?
Hollenbeck.
So Jeremy Hollenbeck, Jim Cornicelli. Beaver Smith, who we'll talk about in a second, as
that's right.
Beaver filled the hole at the end there.
And Jake, Jake was the Media of the Year that year.
Yeah, Jake Lazor was the unsung hero of the whole country. So it was saying that, Marty, you were always the mainstay on attack. So you kept seeing some different personnel. What was that like transitioning through Tim Cox and then Cam got put down there? Cougar was always right there by your side, but you were the mainstay on attack, and you saw a lot of changes. So how do you think that affected, our rise?
No, I think that's a good point. I mean, it was, it was interesting. I think I was, obviously fortunate enough to get a lot of playing time as a freshman, and it's hard not to have success when you had Bill Coons and kind of Bill Atkinson playing with you. But I think that year, since Billy was kind of more of a righty, although he was pretty ambidextrous and everything, I played a lot of the left side. And so I think that gave me a lot of experience, playing over there. And then when we had the changes kind of come, whether it was my sophomore year, and then, then Tim came in, he was obviously more of a righty. So I was able to kind of bounce back over to that side. And Dan kind of, like you mentioned, Cougar kind of really came on as more of that crease attackman. And so, Kevin Cox was a big help too. I mean, I know when Tim did get in trouble, Kevin really kind of stepped in, and did a great job too. But he was a lefty, so then I would kind of bounce back over. So, but it was fine. I mean, I think, it was great just playing with really strong players. You mentioned Cougar, who came from such a great program like West Genesee. He was just so fundamentally sound, and again, kind of did anything that you kind of needed him to do. So, I just think as things evolved over those, sophomore, junior, senior year, it was actually interesting. I always felt in the sense that I think I had a lot of points my sophomore year, but we didn't do that well, or we didn't go as far as a team. And each year after that, my point total went down, but our wins went up and our success went up. And I think it was just because everybody just got more comfortable. Everybody was sharing the ball. Everybody just had a lot of confidence in one another, and that was for the benefit of the team. So,
So we had the attack, as I said, was solidified. We had some really great midfielders. Defensively, we had Dave Pratt. We had Joe Alden, who was an All-American.
Rich Peterson.
Who
he was a sophomore.
Was a sophomore at that point. Pete Riley, who was a starter since he was, a long stick midi starter since he was a freshman. Tony Wallace, now Tony Pezzamende, but it was Tony Wallace then. Yep. He was a long stick midi. We had a really solid team, and to backbone it all, we had, Greg Gebhardt in goal, who we all knew was going to be, outstanding eventually. He didn't play much his freshman year either. I mean, him and Cougar used to stand on the bench and be great cheerleaders for the team. But you knew Greg was coming. And so, with that team, I thought that we were the best team in the country in 91. And then, obviously we went to Hobart and lost mid-season, but it was only a 1-goal game, wasn't it, Joe?
No, the first game they beat us by 5 or 6.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right here.
Was that at Nazareth?
No, that was at Naz.
It was at
Naz.
Nazareth.
Yeah.
Was it Naz? 1912 I've got down here.
Yeah. I remember that was a game Bill Miller just took over in the second half, and I think it was like a one-man wrecking crew.
Right. I do remember that. Yep.
So we had so much momentum and so much, confidence and so much confidence in each other. Then we lay the goose egg against Hobart again at Nazareth, and then it's rebuilding time again, right? We know we lost to the best team in the country at that point, 11 straight national titles, right, or 10 or 11. But we have to build up going forward in order to make sure that we are back in position to play Hobart again in the semifinals, because at that time it was all done by region. So we knew if we were selected to be in the NCAAs that the road went through Hobart again. So going through the rest of the season, we had some ups and downs even after that. We lost Tim Cox. We lost Jim Cornicelli. We saw the resurgence of Beaver Smith, and obviously Cam Bomberry started throwing the ball in the goal a little more. We went into that 91 game with so much confidence, and we got up early, right? Joe, what would we get up? 7 goals?
You're talking about the playoff game.
In 91, yeah.
I know we were up 16-13, I believe, at one point and then Hobart came back in the last 5 or 6 minutes to win. 19-17, it says here that they beat us. So I know we were up 16-13 and feeling pretty good. And then, as it happens at Hobart, tough place to play, obviously. And they're, very, very seasoned veterans at that time. They'd won 11 championships in a row. And they came back and edged us by 2 goals.
Yeah, they were good. They were very good. I got to be honest, I thought we were better. I thought that was our game. We lost it. I think we blew the game. I don't think Hobart won that game. I think that we lost it. And we learned from it.
Remember the questionable call? I think, didn't Greg Gebhardt get a penalty?
Yeah.
I think Greg got a penalty for a high hit or something. That was kind of
It's a great hit.
Started that momentum towards that end of the they kind of got them going, because we had to throw the Hawk in net. He wasn't exactly.
Well, we were
the Hawk, man.
He hadn't played in about 9 games, I don't think, and he was. He was nervous as shit. That poor kid. I kind of felt bad for him, but that was one of the best hits ever. And again, if Steve Miller's listening, thanks a lot, buddy.
Yeah,
it, Steve.
You could watch that over and over, and what we can, Steve Miller made a horrible call, and I was saying earlier, he took the ring right off our fingers. But man, did we learn from that game. I mean, when we left that game, I don't think a lot of people were upset. I think we were angry. I was angry, and knowing that we're going to win a national championship. Sooner or later, sooner the better. We're going to win.
You could kind of see it in their eyes too. I mean, I remember playing them, and they were like, that was one of the first games when they were kind of really scared. Hobart was the way they were playing and the way. I mean, they came back and won the game, but you could see in their eyes they were like, "Man, these guys are for real."
They knew it. They knew we were.
They knew it was coming,
and we were. We didn't. I don't think we added a lot our senior year, Carl and Marty. To that, we got Cornicelli back, which was a huge help, and Jeremy Hollenbeck, really started coming into his own. I mean, he ended up being one of the best players in the country at his level, but Jeremy was. It was me, Jeremy, and Cornicelli played on the second midfield line, and Carl and Brian Silcott and Chris March played on the first line. Then you had Marty, Cougar, and Cam on attack, and then at defense you had Dave Pratt, Rich Peterson, and Joe Alden and Gabby in goal, along with Riley and Tony Pesmeni playing long stick, and Jeff Gershner playing the short stick midi part of that. So that. Going through the fall and just having our eyes focused on beating Hobart the next time, the confidence that we held and that we had in ourselves was outstanding. And I think that's really what the motivating factor was to come into the next game against Hobart, even though we did lose the next game, right, Joe? Regular season at Hobart?
In 92 you're talking about?
Yeah, we lost 13-12.
Yeah, that was another game we were ahead just about the whole game, and they threw in a goal at the end that deflected off one of our
bounced off somebody's
sticks, I think, and got past Gebhardt for the game-winning goal. That was with about 20 seconds left, I want to say, during the regular season.
I think they were trying to feed the crease, and Riley checked the guy's stick or something and went right through.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were pretty. I think we were a pretty confident group going into that game. Felt like we could win, and even though we lost that game, I think we still felt pretty confident that we could beat them down the road if we met them again.
So it was 13-12. We did lose, right? And I remember the faces on our coaching staff. Scott's was always the same, but Basil, Dave Basile, and Billy Mahar, and Didi Kessering, and Robbie Randall. You could see it on their faces, but. The look I felt, afterwards in the locker room that we knew that come playoff time that it was ours. And, this whole show is about, how we rose up and how Nazareth Lacrosse kept, getting better and better. Even though there were some peaks and valleys in there, we kept fighting. And to go into the semifinals, we beat Clarkson in the quarterfinals quite handedly at Nazareth. But we knew that the next weekend we were going to be at Hobart playing in the national semifinals. And I felt that we had the team to do it. We were ready to fight, and the coaching staff to do it. And, the support of the college, with the professors and the nuns and, and everyone that had anything to do with Nazareth College that day was there. Joe, I think you said in an interview that there was 7,000 there. I think there was closer to 10.
I think you're right. I just had I found the game on YouTube there. Somebody posted it on YouTube, and I watched it, and they kept showing the crowd shots. And you're right. I think there had to be close to 10,000 people there to watch that game, because everyone that you knew was there, and it really was probably the single biggest sporting event Nazareth has ever been a part of. I really believe that, at least in my time at Nazareth.
Now, Marty, going into that game, you were, the top attacker in the country for several years now. You had an army of teammates behind you. What did that mean to you and your family? Because your brothers played lacrosse. Your mom was a huge lacrosse supporter. I'm pretty sure Judy was the one that pushed you to go to Nazareth. So what did that mean to the Kelly family coming from Westchester, over 5 hours away, coming up, and now you're on the national stage, attackman of the year, ready to play against Hobart?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess maybe I didn't think about it all that in that realm. I think I would have shit my pants a little bit more if I thought about it to that extent. No, it was just with my older brother Matt playing at Washington College. He certainly knew Hobart forever. I mean, they just could never get past them, and obviously there was it was just huge support. I think going into the game, I for some reason that game I felt pretty good about it. I just felt pretty calm. I think, like you guys were saying before, even our junior year, we were better. I think I thought we just had a lot more. Yeah, we had more depth. But obviously they're so good at what they do, and I think going into that game, I do think that it would have been a much tougher. I mean, it was tough enough as it was, but I think if we had beat them in the regular season, I think it would have been a little bit more challenging to do it in the playoffs, because I think maybe they wouldn't have taken us. I would not say that they took us lightly, but I remember somebody after that game when we lost to them during the regular season saying, it's probably better that we didn't beat them, because now we have more motivation the next time we play them. But I felt pretty comfortable going into that game. I just think that, again, we were just, and my feeling was like, enough's enough. Like, this is it, at least for us anyway, but it's just, we're just better. And so, to finally do it, I think it was, it was great. I mean, it was interesting to, coming from Westchester and, coming from the town next door to Scott. It was interesting that there was a lot of support from a lot of the Syracuse people. I think a lot of the Syracuse players,
big time,
actually ended up coming to the game, from what I recall. They all knew Brian Silcock, as Brian was from, we were all from the same area. So it was huge. And I think, when I think back about my mother, I still show a picture to my current team right now of a picture of she and I on the field after that game, And again, I never would have thought, less than 2 years later, she'd be gone. But, so, the game does have a special meaning. And, I also had a good friend of mine, Chris Howard, who I went to high school with. His father was this guy, Chuck Howard, who was an executive producer at ABC Sports. I mean, he was kind of on the ground floor of ABC Sports with Roone Arledge and covered Olympics. And he was just a huge lacrosse fan because he went to Duke, and they came to that game. And Chuck Howard told me that was one of the best, probably top 4 sporting events he's ever been to. And again, here's a guy who covered Monday Night Football, the Olympics, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was a pretty huge game for me personally as well. Yeah.
So, Carl, you and Marty, captains, 2-year captains now of the team. So much hard work has went into it. Ups and downs, emotions. They tie the game. We're up 6-0. We're up 7-1. We end up being tied at 12 with. Let's go back to it's 12-11, and Hobart gets the ball. Tambroni's got the ball behind with Alden, Joe Alden covering him. You were covering the guy on the left side who ended up scoring the game-winning goal. Mm-hmm. So, I got to bring it up, right?
Carl was covering him?
But, you've been the heart and soul of Nazareth Lacrosse for 4 years. You've worked so hard at this peak. You're about to win, the semifinal, and your player scores the goal. Mm-hmm. What's going through your head at that point?
No, I was pissed. I couldn't believe it, first of all. I mean, I saw the ball come out of Tambroni's stick. I think it bounced off 2 or 3 other people and perfectly it was Bobby Wynn who caught the ball and put it in with like 2 seconds to go. I was like, you got to be effing kidding me. Like, there's just no way.
Now, so many of us, and including Marty, the 3-time All-American and player and attackman of the year, made a ton of mistakes in that game in the fourth quarter. You weren't really part of any of those mistakes until the last second, right? So it all comes down. It all comes down on your shoulders, and you got to bring it on.
Well put, Mark. Well put, Ron.
Oh my God!
I mean, so you were pissed going into overtime. Okay, what's in your head? What's going through your head?
Got to get the ball on the face-off. That was the only thing I was thinking of. and their guy actually ended up jumping, and we got the face-off. So there was no face-off. But that was the only thing I could think of. As soon as they scored the goal to tie it up, I was like, we got to win the face-off. That was the only thing I thought about, was being on the wing and getting the ball.
Right.
That was it.
And we did. They jumped off, and we got the ball to Marty, who went to the goal and lost it. And Marty, I'm standing 5 feet from you, and I can't help over and over watching the film. And I say to myself, I'm right in his way. I am right in his way.
Doesn't sound like you, Ron.
I didn't, I don't think that Hobart game was my best game after watching it several times and seeing a lot of the mistakes. I mean, we gave them the comeback. I mean, we handed it to them on a silver platter. So, but Marty, you went to the goal. I was in your way. I tried to get out of your way. You dropped the ball. You got stripped. And then you found it in you to pick the ball up and throw it in the goal and score the game winner in overtime. The shot heard around the world. And to take down Hobart for the first time ever. They've won 12 straight national titles. To have that in your scrapbook has got to feel pretty good. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. No, yeah. I know. I think there's certainly times. I've certainly thought about if it went the other way, right? You get stripped and the ball goes the other way, and you lose. Would you ever be able to kind of, live that down? But let's not forget what you going offsides in that last goal there, Ronnie.
I know.
Okay.
That's definitely one of the mistakes I made was, on the clear, Gershner had it is far side midi is supposed to stay on side and I went off sides. Boy, believe me, I watch it and I'm showing my daughters as I'm watching. I'm like, see here how I went off sides, and they're like, Dad, why are you watching this game?
I think the cool thing about that play, Marty, was as I've watched it the last couple of weeks, because there's nothing else to do, unfortunately, is watch that or go out and play bounce back with your kid and have a contest about how many times you can go right or left-handed. But I think that play really summed up how we played, because you got, not only did you get stripped, but you got knocked on your ass, you got up, you knocked somebody else down, you got the ball back, and you scored. And that was just, that kind of signified Naz Lacrosse. That's just how we were,
Yeah, no, it was fortunate. Again, the ball it kind of went in front of me, and I do remember kind of getting pissed too. Like, this just can't, this can't happen, And I remember going to, we did the coin toss at the beginning of overtime, and I just was pissed then. I just was like, this can't happen again, So it was pretty cool because I think in the huddle, I even think when Scott kind of pulled like a Mike Krzyzewski saying, when we win the face-off, let's work to get the ball to Marty. And so that kind of gave me a little bit, obviously if he had confidence in me, I got to try to make it work. And so, but yeah, it was frustrating because I remember I kind of slipped a little bit. The guy who covered me, he was a very good defender. He kind of got me on the back check and the ball kind of trickled in front. And so I think he made a mistake. He kind of was on my back and almost kind of went to kind of go. And I was able to just kind of rake it in my stick. And when I turned, I just happened to be right in front of the net. So I think if he played a little bit better position, on the ground ball, it wouldn't have been as easy. But
you fell a couple times that game, and I think it was due to those champion cleats that Randall's brother got for us when we had to clean out his warehouse.
Brett Randall.
Carl,
I got a question. I got a question for all you guys. How did you guys maintain your focus after allowing that goal with 3 seconds to go in regulation? How did you not let the wind get too far out of your sails, and how did you recover from that?
My part of it was, of course, as Carl said, we're all in Marty, we're all in disbelief that we just, blew, such a big lead and let these guys back in it. And I got to be honest, I'm not sure if Marty doesn't score that goal right there, if we win that game. I think that we had a plan coming, right out of it that, Nelson said, when we win the face-off, I'm not confident to say that we would have won that game if Marty didn't score that goal, because the momentum was going their way. Everything was going their way. We're stuck, 10 feet from all their fans. You could feel the heat behind your neck at that point. And so, I thank God, Marty scored that goal because that was a huge thing for Nazareth lacrosse. It was a huge thing for lacrosse in general, Division III lacrosse, because as you know, Hobart went Division I a couple years later. If we would have done things a little smarter during that game, I think we win by 5 or 6 goals, if not more. But we didn't. But we had players like Carl and Marty and guys like that were able to put the team on their back. And
Gabby had a big
scored.
game.
Gabby,
he had 20. I think he had 21 saves in that game.
Yeah, he was unbelievable.
Probably 8 in the first quarter.
Gabby,
he was on his head that day.
Was huge. The one play that I thought stuck out more than, or not more, but just behind Marty's big goal was they had a local player named Larry DiGiovanni. That played for them. He was a long stick midi. And Carl, I don't know if you remember, but I've watched it over and over and over. Carl hit him so hard
on the face-off.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah. I'm not sure he returned to the game after that. And
oh, really?
And yeah,
I remember that. No.
Well, the only reason why I say that is because he was covering me. I was his mark, and after that, he wasn't on me anymore. So I'm not sure if he was on in the game or not, but
because he couldn't breathe.
Carl hit him so hard, I think it sent him into the next universe. So
well, that's how we played though. That was our style back then, and you could play like that back then. You can't do that now. I mean, the game is it's changed so much, but that was how we played. We were just we were junkyard dogs. We really were. I mean, we practiced on pavement. We practiced on tennis courts. I mean. Think of all the different places we were in that armory with rats running around us. I mean, you couldn't even make a movie out of it if you wanted to. It was crazy, the places we were, Yeah. That one field that we practiced over by turf time. Remember that?
Turf time.
We definitely didn't have it like they have it today. Would you agree with that, Joe?
Yeah, that's an understatement. Practicing in parking lots. Wasn't there like a movie theater that you guys practiced in?
Yeah.
Freshman year, yeah.
I went right into the
Ronnie
light
ran
pole.
into the light pole.
Yeah.
At first. All right. So, Marty, thanks so much for coming on. We're going to travel through the next couple of years here, the next couple minutes. And but, Nazareth Lacrosse The Rise, you were a huge part of it. And, you still wear the colors proud of this day, even though you're coaching at another Division III school. And but thanks for making the rise of Nazareth Lacrosse so great, because you really did a great job.
Well, thanks, Ronnie. And it's great that you guys are doing this, and I'm just I'm really thrilled to be a part of it. I appreciate you guys thinking of me.
All right. Thanks so much, brother.
Yeah,
Marty.
Marty.
Guys.
See you, buddy.
See you.
All right, Joe.
Yes.
Joe, so we beat Hobart, okay?
Yeah.
Place goes crazy.
Yeah.
We end up putting the icing on the cake the following weekend in Pennsylvania. We ended up beating Roanoke. I think this final score was 22-11 to win a national title. First national title ever to be won by anyone besides Hobart at that point. Nazareth Lacrosse is rising, continuing to climb.
Right.
Lost a big senior class after 92, but they still had the likes of Cornicelli and Hollenbeck and Silcott and Bomberry and Cox. They meet up against Hobart the next year in the semifinals. I don't believe they played in the regular season the next year, did they?
They did not. I'm looking at it here. They did not play in the regular season.
Hobart was very fast to take us off the schedule.
Yeah. I don't think that was a coincidence that we didn't play them.
I don't either. And so Hobart wins the national title the next year. Hobart comes back the next year. We lose to them again in 1994. We lose again. And then in 95, Hobart is gone, and Nazareth goes to the national championship again.
Correct. They really had a great team in 95 as well. They won their first 14 games, Nazareth did, and made it to the national championship game. That happened to be the year that Salisbury was really powerful. And they won 22-13 was the final score. That game was played in College Park, Maryland. And I think it was a steady rain that day, I want to say, 95. And we really had a good team, but Salisbury was really superior. So we clearly were the second best team that year, but Salisbury was really strong.
Naz came out tough in the first half, and and stayed with Salisbury. The second half proved to be a little too much for Nazareth. Salisbury had a little too much, and they lost that game. But the next 2 years, Nazareth Lacrosse comes back under the leadership of Scott Nelson, under the his great recruitment of some really great players, and wins the national championship the next 2 years in a row, 96 and 97, to give a total of 3 national titles to Nazareth Lacrosse and to Scott Nelson in, 10 years?
Yeah, and 97, that would have been, 11 years?
11 years.
96 or 86 to 97, yes. So 3 national titles in a span of 11 seasons. The 96 team, they went undefeated, 15-0. And then the 97 team, they lost a couple of games. I know they lost to UMBC, which was a Division I team. And they lost had a really bad loss in 97 to Alfred, down at Alfred. And then ended up avenging that loss in the playoffs and on their way to winning the national championship in 97.
So in 11 years, Scott and Nazareth College acquired, and Bill Carey. I must mention Bill Carey, who I think is the greatest athletic director ever to be a part of sports. Bill Carey is still at Nazareth at that time, correct?
Yes, he was. He was the athletic director. He retired in 1998, and really did. He was really the mastermind behind it all, I guess you'd say. He's the one that hired Scott Nelson, and he's the one that spearheaded the start of men's lacrosse. They knew they wanted to have a spring sport that, a sport that you could play in any kind of weather, which lacrosse was that way. And that's why they started it initially. And Bill Carey was really the kind of the mastermind behind all that.
Right. So the common denominator over the 11 years is Bill Carey, it's Scott Nelson, and yourself. You were there the whole entire time, besides for the first year. And that basically completes the total start to finish of Nazareth Lacrosse. And when I look back and I look at that time of the 11 years, I think of when I first got on campus and I was recruited to go there with Carl, and Carl and I's class got there with Marty and Cougar and Riley and the rest of them. I could not help to not think about the Nazareth alumni and how great the foundation has been with the alumni through this period. Not even through, I think the alumni has been great up, till now as well. How many years have we been at it now? What is this, 20 something years?
35, right?
35 years, excuse me. 35 years we've built this alumni, but I felt that the alumni that started this program and that helped Nazareth with this rise, it really needed to be recognized here because they not only started the program, they were at every game, they were at every tailgate, they were at the championship when we won it. They're handing out T-shirts that we already won, and I just think that has been a huge part of Nazareth Lacrosse success in general has been the alumni. The one I wanted to point out who I have on the line with us now is Basil. And Basil's been with Nazareth Lacrosse from day one, and his son just finished playing for the Golden Flyers last year, so he sent his oldest son to Nazareth as well. So he's been with us from start to finish as well. So Bays, glad to have you online here. I'm here with Joe and Carl for the Rise of Nazareth Lacrosse.
What's up, fellas?
Let me just say one thing first. There would be no Nazareth Lacrosse without Dave Seil.
Correct. And
no doubt about it.
I wanted to say
there wouldn't be a lot of things without Dave.
That's true.
Bays,
all of which we can mention.
We definitely have a little purple and gold in me. Well,
I wanted to save the best for last because I think that what he stands for and what he's been through and what the foundation that he's helped Nazareth build has definitely given me some great memories, and I can probably speak for Carl and the rest of everyone else as well. When we went to tailgates, in my era, right after Basil was our coach, he's still putting on the tailgates. He's still a part of Nazareth Lacrosse, and he started Nazareth Lacrosse, and then he stayed on and continued to coach, to be a coach at Nazareth Lacrosse. And if you ask Greg Gebhardt will say that Dave Basile was the biggest influencer in his life, to become the goalie he was, National Player of the Year, which I'm sure, Baze, you are very proud of Gabby for those accolades.
They don't get any better than that.
But you started
You have to have the drive and the work ethic. That's the key part of it.
You started this program. You were there every day till we won a national title. And tell us about the impact that Nazareth had on you for one. But if you look in the record books, you're probably not going to see Dave Basile holds the career save percentage, right?
No.
Yeah. When Gabby got up to accept his awards, you were the first person he pointed to. So that's got to be a big part of your life and what you've done, because it sticks out to me. To be honest with you, is that relationship you had with him, and that relationship you had as a Nazareth Golden Flyer, to at the end, with Pam being a part of it the whole time, but you sent your oldest son to be a Golden Flyer as well. So
that poor kid was destined right from day one. He didn't really know it. If you look at any picture I ever have of Anthony, he's got something Nazareth on it somewhere. On his bed was a blanket with Nazareth all over it. He just, he was probably brainwashed at a young age, but I was the only one that didn't want him to go to Naz. He wanted to go.
Right. And
I kept pushing him to look at other places, and he's nope.
What about you going to Naz? How what was the deciding factor for a guy like yourself to go there and become, a part of a startup program?
Well, you got to give really got to give all the credit to Nelly, Scotty Nelson. Sean Riley and I were playing summer league, and Nelson's roommate in college, Mark Thames, was my coach for the green team, summer league green team. And we were playing one day, and he goes, all right, I got this guy starting up this team up here at Nazareth. I'm like, Nazareth? I'm not going to Pennsylvania. There's no in Rochester. Oh, no. So we hopped in a car. We went up there, took a little visit. Nellie says, come on in, we need a goalie. And Sean and I went in. And before you know it, it landed to be a Golden Flyer. Well, Nelson did say that we were going to California, and the ratio was 9-1. That didn't hurt anything.
So
from Homer, going to California was pretty good.
I see in the background here. I don't know if you see it or not, Baze, but is that Randall standing there? Joe, can you hear me?
Joe.
Walked in, RD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Rob.
Yeah,
Rob, switch places with Joe. We're going to ask you one quick question. Get in there, Joe. Switch with Rob.
This will enable me to get ready for golf.
Yeah, you
Make
go
sure
get ready.
you two stay 6 feet apart.
Rob, you sit in here. So now, Basil, we got.
What's up, fellas? Who's on here?
What's up, Coach?
We got Basil calling in from Homer. We got me and Carl in the studio, and yourself.
Okay. I tried getting on, but I couldn't get on my computer.
Yeah, we were having some technical difficulties in the beginning.
Couldn't find the power button.
Scoop, you and Basil were part of the beginning of Nazareth Lacrosse. You are obviously still there. He is obviously still a big part of Nazareth. I want to talk about just the first 11 years, right? I want you to say in the first 11 years, what in your mind was the biggest thing that made Nazareth so successful over those 11 years?
Well, let me correct you first. I was not a part of the start of the program. I was close, but I was not with Baze and Gut and Sean and Billy and Tommy, BA, Sensibo. I was not there with those guys.
Not the first year, but you were there the second year, right?
Yeah.
He had Calavati and Steller too the first.
Yeah, Ryan Steller, yeah.
Yep.
They made it.
And other guys too.
4 years, but they got injured. they played in 5.
Sensibo.
Yeah, I was just referring to those guys that made it through, you know?
Oh, right.
At least made it through in that class. So I just want to correct you there, but.
Okay. So what was the biggest part for you? Well, I mean, why the 11 years? And I know you weren't there for the whole 11 years. You were in and out and in and out, but you were. I mean, you were there for the second year, and you were a big part of it. Recruiting. I remember you coming to Rush Henrietta, recruiting us. You were our coach in '92 when we won a national title right there with us, as was Basil.
Yeah.
Well, what's the best memory? What's the reason why Nazareth Lacrosse is what it is?
I mean, there's a lot of great memories for sure. I can't pinpoint one. You know, there was a lot of things that happened in the office that we probably can't talk about in this podcast, right, Base?
Absolutely. Car rides.
You know, this is we got to keep this PG rated. But you know, I think just the consistency, and when you think about that, I mean, you got to go back to Nelson, you know, and everything that he did from a recruiting standpoint. I mean, he taught me how to recruit. He taught me how to be aggressive in everything that we were doing. You know, we would get on the road, you know, and I don't know if Bays did this as much, but with my role, you know, I went on the road a lot with Scott, and you know, whether it was to Rush Henrietta or to Arundequoit or to Syracuse or Yorktown, we did that a lot, and you know, those trips are memorable and taught me a great deal on how to
Coaching convention.
aggressive in recruiting and how to start a program.
Well,
Those are things that really stand out in my mind.
The rise certainly, you know, all those factors that you just mentioned must have played a huge role in everything you did day to day to make Nazareth, you know, keep going up that plane and keep going. And to be quite honest with you, you know, a lot of people don't know this, but you were part of the problem in 1990 when we took our dip because you were coaching at Alfred. And we lost to Alfred that year because you know of your knowledge of what Nazareth Lacrosse did on the field and helping Alfred beat us. So I'm glad you jumped on because you were part of the peaks and you were part of the valley.
Well, I don't know if I can take a whole lot of credit for that, but yeah, I mean it was a great experience for me to leave Nazareth at that point to pursue a master's degree, and then to have the opportunity to come back not only once but twice, and you know, it's such a privilege to be a part of it.
Yeah, so
You got to think that the biggest history for Nazareth, though, that kept it together, was the family base that we built right from day one.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Without,
I mean, you know, we were
the younger
talking
guys,
about.
the younger guys looked up to the older guys. Is one thing I told my son. I said he never gets to experience is I was a senior for 4 years. We didn't have anybody older.
Right. Great point. And you were really a
4 or
4-year
5?
captain, Base. You know,
You know, we all were freshmen, and we had a couple Murgatroyd and a couple guys like that. They're a little bit older, but we picked on those guys worse than the young kids.
Yeah, I would have to agree, Baze. I mean, the coolest part about when we came, and I know, at least for me, and I know it is for Ronnie and Riley and Cougar and Marty and all the guys that we played with was, and the guys after too, is the family brotherhood atmosphere that was created. And there's a lot of guys that played lacrosse that don't have that. A lot of teams
No,
don't,
you got to
don't have
want to
any of
fight
that.
everybody that we played with for 11 years. And under that, they would, you know, those foxhole guys.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
everybody would fight for you, stick up for you.
Yep.
Well, that's
well, you know, you guys might remember some of this stuff, but you know, I can remember going to the Final Four when it was in Syracuse, and you know, all of us camping out together.
Yeah.
You know,
KOA.
in a freaking rainstorm. What a mess that was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
You
that was
know,
my
and-
wife's. That was my wife's first trial. If she got through that, she could come to the rest of them.
Yeah, right. You know, I mean, that was a you talk
Oh,
about
lucky
putting a
her.
family together.
Lucky Pam.
That was instrumental, I think, in everything that came after. You know, how about we had an end of the season picnic in Onondaga State Park or whatever it was in Syracuse, and the whole team was there.
Yep.
You know, This was well after school was over.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was well represented throughout the years, and it's that's where when everybody gets the trophies, when times everybody started caring about themselves.
So
times are a little bit different.
With all that said, fellas, about this show that's going to be out there for everyone to see on YouTube that didn't chime in today, that didn't log in, but I'm glad it's ending this way in the terms of the rise of Nazareth Lacrosse and the current success and over the 35 years has been about family. And you see that in every aspect of the apparel that kids wear and that my kids wear and that your kids wear, and it's all about, it goes back to the Nazareth Golden Flyers, and it was all started in 1986 by Scott Nelson, who was a great coach, and I wanted to say, thank you to Scott, because on behalf of all of us, because he wasn't the most easiest to deal with all the time. We all know that, but he had a vision, and not only his vision of being, running 54 and slow breaks and fast breaks, but his vision was family. And
he
that's
wasn't there to be your friend. He was there to be your coach. He took care of you when you needed something done.
correct.
Yep.
So that's Nazareth Lacrosse The Rise, Rob. I'm sure you'll go back and watch the podcast. Joe, thanks for coming on and being such a great supporter of it. Carl, as I said, you were the heart and soul of Nazareth Lacrosse. To have you on here on this podcast today to kind of give your inputs and so forth. I hope people got, understand that whatever you say comes from the heart, buddy. And I thank Marty for coming on, and Bays, your input. And like I said, Joe, while we got everyone on the line here, all the alumni on, and I want to nominate right now Dave Basile for the Hall of Fame.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Nice.
I need that to be documented that we want Dave Basile in the Nazareth Lacrosse Hall of Fame, because if there's anyone who deserves it, it's him.
Certain criteria. Joe Seil really should be our first one.
Do I have anything to do with that?
Joe's not allowed to go in until after he retires. So, and
Joe really was the icon.
I know. Joe's not allowed in until after he retires. That's
That could be tomorrow.
You could run me out of there.
The one other thing I just wanted to mention was, which I think is pretty cool, is all the guys that played. We came from basically one spot, and now all the guys that played at Naz are now coaching, right? Youth,
There's a lot of
pro, whatever. Women's lacrosse. Ronnie has an amazing club, Monster. You got guys like Terry Getz that I didn't play with, but I coach with now, and Josh Lewis, and people like Tony Pesamente, who over at Victor, who's had a lot of success, and
don't forget guys like Tommy Mariano.
Yeah, Mariano, Jake Coons,
Kevin Cox,
Randall, Coxey. I mean, the guys that played Prolax. You guys like
Mahar,
Neil Paulus, who
Mahar.
played in the World Games. You got Silcott, who I think played in the World Games. I mean, it's pretty cool that from what we started, the effect that we've had on the landscape of lacrosse. And you can see it every year when we go to Placid. And Naz beats the D1 teams, the teams that that should smoke us.
and you know what?
And they don't, which is pretty cool, I think.
and Nelson always promoted giving back.
Yep.
And we try to do the same thing. It's so
Habitat for Humanity.
And it's funny that Nazareth Lacrosse coaching tree, they don't discriminate. Even the bench warmer, Gino Peluso, who never saw a minute of quality time in Nazareth, is a successful Division III NCAA coach.
So I think that's pretty cool.
Rob, even the bench warmers get good jobs, right?
It happens to the best of us.
I had to throw that in there.
But we've made a lot of good contributions to the game. We've given back a lot. I mean, it's a great game.
Well, fellas, thanks so much.
Thanks
So much for coming on today. Appreciate it. We may even do somewhere down the line a follow-up podcast to it. But The Rise of Nazareth Lacrosse The Rise is the official title. It will be on YouTube and Spreaker and Google and iTunes and all those great places for everyone to come watch it. Joe, if you can get the link out to everyone else in the Nazareth community, would be great as well, because I think we stayed real positive today, which was great. So thanks so much, fellas. Appreciate it. And,
RD,
yeah.
thanks so much for doing this.
My
Appreciate it.
pleasure. So I enjoyed doing it. So everybody be safe. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
See
Stay
ya.
healthy.